Shop, episode 205, an inside look into the world's oldest coffee shop, Cafe Florian in Venice, Italy. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris Difirio. I'm your host for the show, and I really am excited to have you along today. Now, this is a very special episode because it is episode 205, but when you count shift breaks and all of the episodes combined, this is the 300th broadcast of Keys to the Shop, and that is really cool and really kind of intimidating to think about. But to celebrate, we're talking with Cafe Florian today. They are the oldest coffee shop in the world in Venice, Italy, in continuous operation since 1720. They too are celebrating 300 years of serving Venice and the world. And I'm so excited to be able to have gotten a chance to talk with them. Really cool. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers because they curate the best coffee equipment from all over the world, and then they match it with your specific needs as their customer. So as you run your coffee bar, as you get ready to open a coffee bar, or you're expanding, and you need commercial equipment, but you also need somebody to partner with to help you select the right equipment, Prima Coffee is your one-stop shop for all of the above. So when you go to the website, prima-coffee.com, you're going to see an amazing selection, first of all. Second of all, you're going to see an amazing amount of resources that they've put together for free, blogs and videos as well, to help you learn coffee, learn the equipment, and be equipped for success, which is really what they're all about. So obviously, I recommend you check out Prima Coffee for all of your commercial coffee equipment needs. It doesn't matter if it's grinders, brewers, or espresso machines, or even things like under-counter refrigeration and sinks. The whole spectrum is what they offer you, and they're amazing people as well. So go to this website to let them know that you found them on this show. That's prima-coffee.com/keys. Again, that website, prima-coffee.com/keys. Today's episode is also brought to you by the leaders in performance plant-based beverages, and that is, of course, the Barista Series from Pacific. Now, the Pacific Barista Series is not just an amazing line of plant-based performance beverages, but it's also a line of beverages that are created for and alongside with heavy feedback from the barista community. And that's key because every little detail that goes into these products, whether we're talking almond, soy, rice, oat, coconut, you can be assured that it's been well thought through and bench tested for performance. So it has the ability to take the heat from steaming, produce amazing latte art ready texture, and the flavor balance is always focused on the coffee. So I recommend you get this in your store. Get the Barista Series on the bar. Try it out for yourself and see what you think. I really think it's going to elevate the plant-based offerings in your shop. Go to pacificfoods.com to learn more. Just follow the link in the show notes and really see what the Barista Series can do to raise your game in plant-based beverages. Okay, so I don't know about you, but when I first started learning about coffee, one of the first things that I learned about was the history of coffee. You read the story of how it was discovered, how it was spread throughout the world, and the emergence of coffee bars and the important role they played in society. And one of the places you learn about when you read about the history of coffee is Cafe Florian. Founded in 1720, this year, they celebrate 300 years of continuous operation as a coffee bar. That's incredible because, you'd scratch your head for a little bit to think of a coffee bar that's been around for even 20 years. And we're talking about the actual coffee bar, not the brand necessarily. But there are very few that have been around for even a quarter century, let alone 3 centuries. So there's a ton of history in this coffee bar, and it has stood the test of time. Cafe Florian has served as an epicenter for culture and social life and political life in Venice for all of those years. The Cafe Florian experience is unlike any other one out there. The art on the walls and the traditions that they keep up in their service makes you feel as though you are just living through history. You can feel the history and the significance of this space all around you, with all the details that they look after in their service, the way they organize their staff, the way they take care of the building, the way they curate the art, the events that they hold. It's all about creating an experience for you. And obviously, 300 years of honing their craft at serving coffee is going to give them quite an edge in service and the service experience. Now, today we get to talk with the longest tenured employee there. That is the art director for Cafe Florian, Stefano Stipitivich. Now, today we're going to be talking with Stefano through a translator. That is Cristiana Rivolta, and she is the sales and marketing manager at Cafe Florian. And we cover a host of various topics, from history to operation to how they view outside movements of coffee, what they look for in their staff and how they train them. And this is a very unique operation for a coffee bar. And again, I'm excited to share this conversation with you as we kind of talk about what goes into that experience at Cafe Florian. So without further ado, here now is my conversation with the art director at the now 300-year-old Cafe Florian, Stefano Stipitivich. Cristiana, Stefano, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Keys to the Shop. To say it's an honor is quite an understatement, because I've been reading about the Cafe Florian ever since I got into coffee and read my first coffee history book. So to get to explore the inner workings of this is quite an honor. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Grazie anche per me.
Well, I guess we should just start right from the beginning here. And one of the things I'm most impressed with, beyond the longevity, and congratulations, by the way, this is a celebration of your 300th year as an operating coffee bar. So bravo to you. We talk about different epochs, different movements in coffee throughout history. And one of the most intriguing things is that Cafe Florian has been around for all of them, pretty much, well, not all of them, but the modern ones, over 300 years. What has changed over the years? And maybe a better question would be, what are the major chapters or categories that define the evolution of Cafe Florian from 1720 until now?
Allora, il
Cafe Florian opened in 1720, and the name of the owner was Florian Francesconi. So from the name of the owner comes the name of the Cafe Florian. Actually, at the beginning, the real name was Alla Venezia Trionfante. It means to the triumphant Venice. But it was quite a long name, and so all the customers start saying, let's go to Florian's and not to Alla Venezia Trionfante. When Cafe Florian opened, Venice was not so rich as it was in the past. Napoleon was about to come and conquer the city. But Venice was still striving to be the place of, let's say, richness and fun. And so the carnival started being held and played all around the city. When Cafe Florian opened, there were, together with Cafe Florian, about 200 other coffee houses in the city. And coffee started being much appreciated by the Illuminists, because it was differently from wine. It was a drink that could be drank without getting drunk. Okay, so you could still think and speak by drinking coffee. So it became the drink of the Illuminists. Cafe Florian was completely restored in the middle of the 19th century. So if you come to Venice and to Cafe Florian nowadays, what you see is not the original Cafe Florian when it opened in 1720, but it is exactly as it was when it was restored in 1853. So you come in a place that is exactly as it was, let's say, 200 years ago, more or less, and it is still nowadays the place where all the people who come to Venice go to have a coffee, relax, and breathe the history. So it is still appreciated both by customers coming from all over the world and by Venetians as well.
Ma anche dei veneziani.
So in those years, the way that the Cafe Florian entertained guests and the way that it operated, I mean, I'm curious about that. And the way that it's operating now, there's many components of what it does. There's events, there's art, there's the food, the coffee. Was it always all of those things, or did those get added on as years went by?
Allora, nel Settecento.
So when, as I told before, when the cafe opened, the coffee, I mean the drink, was highly appreciated, but it was also quite expensive. So it was accompanied by cups, saucers, spoons of very high quality. And that kind of porcelains are in a museum nowadays in Venice. You can see them in Venice. So we don't have those kind of porcelains, of course, dated 18th century, but still today, exactly as in the past, the service of the Cafe Florian is made on silver trays with porcelains. That means cups, saucers, teapots, and so on, of high quality of silver and high quality porcelain.
Particolarmente buono e bello.
What other things from the past are a part of the way that the Cafe Florian operates today?
Allora,
Besides the service on silver trays, we also have some kind of stuff, of food that we still serve, because many things that we have belongs to the tradition linked to Venice and the Veneto region. And the way how we serve the liquors and the hot chocolate is the same as it was in the past.
la cioccolata.
So as you have been around for so long, obviously there are some really great stories that are part of what you talk to guests about or what people can read about. And I wonder, what are some of your favorite stories to share? What are the more intriguing stories that you share with guests and history buffs? Because I imagine there's very many historians that come to visit you that have taken place under the roof of Cafe Florian.
Allora, ci sono moltissimi.
As you said, there are so many stories about Cafe Florian and its guests. Maybe one of the most famous is a story about Giacomo Casanova. He was imprisoned in Palazzo Ducale. The name of the prisons are I Piombi. They say that when he escaped from prison, before going to France, he couldn't do anything but have a break at Cafe Florian to drink his last coffee in Venice. Another story is about Lord Byron. Before going to Greece and dying there, he was used to come to Venice, and when he was here, he liked swimming so much from St. Mark's Square to the Lido Island. And they say that after all this kind of exercise, he loved to go back to St. Mark's Square and go to Cafe Florian and have a break there, eating and drinking. They also say that he met his lovers there, but it's a story.
E rimaneva per ore. Un'altra storia.
And then this is a story related to a quite famous Italian woman. She was a marchioness. The name was Luisa Casati. She had quite an interesting life. She loved Venice, and once she organized a huge party for 400 people. She invited all these guests and she dressed them. She spent lots of money for all the dresses, and also when she entered St. Mark's Square, she used to be accompanied by 2 beautiful and big servants and 2 leopards. And that night, she compelled all her guests to drink only champagne all night long. And Cafe Florian was open just for her and her guests. all night long serving champagne to everyone. When she died, she was quite poor.
Era povera.
No wonder. Um,
Un'altra curiosità.
And finally, Ernest Hemingway. Everyone knows that he liked to drink. So he went to Harry's bar, to Cipriani's, who was his friend, and he drank Bellinis there. But then he used to come to Cafe Florian and drink Amarone. Amarone is quite a famous wine here. It's a red wine cultivated in the Veneto country, and he's really good and expensive.
Della Campania Veneto.
wow, so many. There's probably too many to count in terms of stories that you could tell through 300 years. I want to know what has transpired to help Cafe Florian stay open for 300 years. At one point, I imagine there's the business of the cafe itself. And then at another point, I imagine it turns into a historical landmark that's protected as a part of the culture of Venice. And that's just my guess, but I want to know what has led to it being open for so long.
Il Florian è il
So
caffè.
why Cafe Florian is the oldest coffee house in Italy? And why we are still in activity after 300 years? Because when Cafe Florian was born, it was a coffee house. Nowadays, it is still a coffee house. So no changes in that kind of job and working and operating with the customers and the clientele that we have. And then you must think that we are in Venice. In the 19th century, when all the other cities all around the world were changing, Venice remained the same. The middle class that could change things was poor in Venice. So the city stayed as it was. And Cafe Florian kept on serving coffees and chocolates and liquors and so on. And the reason why, after all these years, we are still in activity is that we still keep that kind of tradition still on. We keep serving in a particular way that nowadays we are the only coffee house to have.
E alla qualità del servizio.
Excellent. How has the ownership changed over the years as you are currently, I mean, is it still in a family? Is it passed down just by interested parties? How has that structure evolved?
Nel corso dei secoli.
So at the beginning, it was a Venetian family, the Francesconi family. If you remember, the first owner was Floriano Francesconi. And then his nephew, Valentino, and his grandnephew, Antonio, continued the activity. In the middle of the 19th century, when the Cafe Florian was completely restored, the owners were made of a partnership of people, other families that kept the cafe until the beginning of the 20th century, when another Venetian family, the Famiglia Vedaldi, started running the business. 10 years ago, in 2009, a group of Italian entrepreneurs, among them there is also one of the members of the Fendi family, the fashion brand Fendi, became the new owners of the Cafe Florian. And they are now running the business.
Quindi una cordata tutta italiana.
I'm interested to know a little bit more about the running of the business itself. So the structure of the way the cafe runs, we know that it takes a lot of different roles, employee structures and things like that. So how does it run structurally speaking? What roles are needed for its operation today?
Allora, al Caffè
So
Florian.
let's speak about the Cafe Florian. During the high season starts in March, ends at the end of October. There are about 90 people working at Cafe Florian. You have a director and 3 assistants who manages all the Cafe Florian activities. And then we have a group of 29 waiters. They work in pairs, and you can distinguish them and their roles about the tie that they have around their neck. So the first waiter have a black papillon. The mi-chef have a gray papillon, while the second waiters wear a white papillon. During the day, they usually wear a white jacket, while in the evening, they wear a tuxedo or a frock, according to their roles. So first waiters wear a frock, and while the second waiters and the demi-chef wear a tuxedo. And then you have barman, counter clerks, our executive chef, and all his staff who prepares coffees, chocolates, cakes, salads, club sandwiches, and so on. And then during the high season, we also have our orchestra. They are 10 people, all music masters, and they play all day long. They shift, of course, but they play all day long, from the morning till midnight, when the Cafe Florian closes.
Composte da 4 professori di musica.
I want to dig deeper into that question or into that subject a little bit. With all of those people, with 90 people working and the assistants to the director, etc., I'm always interested in learning how communication actually happens so that everybody knows their role when they enter their shift. So are there meetings? Are there communications over email or group chats and things like that to keep people on the same page and organized?
Assolutamente.
So in Venice, there are no cars. So we are compelled to meet and speak with one another. So Cafe Florian isn't any different from that. We have meetings and so on, but we speak with each other. I mean, when a shift ends and the new one starts, if there is any new things to know, they meet and speak. And then, of course, there is the director as a supervisor. But everything, we work in order to be just like a perfect Swiss watch. Everything should be perfect and on time. And then there is also a huge and important selection about the staff before hiring them for good. We cooperate with many schools in order to train new people and new staff. And if someone is able to insert inside this kind of structure and to understand how the colleagues work together and what is necessary to do, this person could become part of the staff.
All'interno del Caffè Florian.
So it sounds as though the training happens partially in, you expect them to be trained almost before becoming staff, but then there's the staff training itself when they enter in to employment under Cafe Florian. I wonder if you could describe a little bit about how intensive the training is for somebody who, let's say somebody wants to become a barman or a barista. What kind of training do they undergo to be able to get to the point where there's confidence in their performance?
We start selecting our people, our staff, doing stage. So people start coming in stage. And if they are skilled enough, they return doing another stage. After that, they are hired for a period. And during that period, they are trained by the colleagues who already works in that role. This is for any kind of job inside the Cafe Florian. You should be a counter clerk, a barman, a waiter, even an assistant director, okay? No changes. You need to do a long period of training. And if you go on, then you can be hired by the company and you become a member of the staff of the Cafe Florian.
What would you say are the virtues of an ideal employee of Cafe Florian?
If we think of a waiter, they have to speak 2 languages apart from Italian. English, of course, and then another one. Let's say of good presence, if not handsome, but at least they have to look handsome. And they have to be elegant. When they move, when they serve, they have to learn a special way to serve and to speak with the customers. That's why we every year keeps lessons about the history of Cafe Florian, the city of Venice, and the traditions. So that when a customers come, they can relate to the customer and they can speak with him and give all the information and tell also the story that you heard before by Stefano about Cafe Florian and Venice. Another curiosity about the service of the Cafe Florian. When a waiter comes to your table with the tray, he doesn't need to ask who ordered the coffee, who ordered the cappuccino, the cake, or the drink, but he knows, he remembers exactly who ordered what, so that when you have your tray before you, you have exactly what you have ordered. You don't have to change or to ask or nothing.
Perfettamente a chi l'ha ordinato.
Very interesting, and it's very important, obviously, especially at that level. When you look at coffee bars around you that I would say may not have as stringent of standards of service, and this is interesting to me, like what would frustrate you the most about the service you get in other coffee bars, having been used to the experience of service at Cafe Florian?
Ci distingue.
So the difference between Cafe Florian and let's say other coffee houses or bar is of course that we are the oldest coffee house, but we still are both a place where tourists come, but also Venetians come. So Cafe Florian is still today a lively place. Okay, you can meet any kind of people from, let's say, commoners to movie stars, politicians, writers, and so on. And it doesn't matter, they are all together there inside Cafe Florian sipping their coffee. There is a book written by two American economists. Their name is Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. And the title of the book is The Experience Economy. In the preface of this book, they ask a questions to the readers. They say, why should I go to Cafe Florian and have my coffee there instead of going to another bar, let's say a bar in the train station, sip a coffee? It is always a coffee. The difference is that if you go to the train station or in a normal bar, you just sip your coffee and get the energy, a little bit of the energy that is contained in a coffee cup. When you go to Cafe Florian, you make a journey through history. So what we have and what we give is experience. It's not a coffee.
Florian, faccio un viaggio nella storia.
Well said. Well said. We often talk on the show about how experience in the cafe is the thing that people are looking for most of the time, whether they know it or not. Obviously, you're delivering that above and beyond where I think most of us are, and you've been developing that for so long. So comparing service, when you have such high standards for service and the way that you move when you're serving customers, and I'm curious to know, because people have been trained in other coffee bars, in other cafes before coming to you, and I wonder if you could detail maybe some of the things that you need to untrain people to do, like the bad habits that you see in maybe the average service that will not stand at the Florian, that you need to train out of people, and why it's a big deal and why it makes a difference.
Sì, allora noi abbiamo...
When people come to work at Cafe Florian, they already know something about the place they are going into. So what they learned before should be forgotten. They start anew. That's why we have young people coming from the hotel school. So when they finish the school, they just come. So sometimes we are the first, let's say the first job that they have. So they start from the highest level. And on the contrary, when people come and work after any other job experience in any other coffee house or bar. They are trained from the beginning by our staff. And so the first word that they are told are, forget what you learned so far. Now you start fresh.
Anche dal punto di vista economico.
Great. So if you sum up the standard for service that you have, is it the attention to detail that's the most important? Is it presence and consistency? What are the most important aspects of service that you would say define or separate your service from other experiences that people might have?
La cosa più importante.
What makes Cafe Florian unique is the sum of many things. Service, attention to detail, consistency, the staff that is quite prepared to serve people, and so on. But you have to start from the place where Cafe Florian is. So St. Mark's Square is a beautiful place where you can sit, and then you can sit outside on St. Mark's Square or sit inside the rooms of Cafe Florian. So starting from the ambience and the atmosphere, you feel like being in a sort of, let's say, museum where the time stopped. And then while you are seated there, you are served by a beautiful staff in a quite unique service made on silver trays. You have a high quality products, food, beverage, and so on. So is everything put together that creates what we call the Florian experience. And that's what our guests usually said after they go out. And this is the reason why, even if Venice is quite full of tourists, we have customers who come for the first time. And then when they come back to Venice, even if there are lots of places to see, because Venice is beautiful in any way and in any place where you go, they come back to Cafe Florian always. So even if they are tourists, we have regulars among tourists.
In questa incredibile città.
What are some of the biggest challenges you say that this operates it has to operate like a Swiss watch. And I imagine that standard has not changed in 300 years. And so being able to accomplish that in the midst of things that you can't control, it can be a challenge. And I wonder, what are some of the biggest challenges in the course of the cafe's history or even recently?
Allora, la maggiore...
The answer to your question is quite unusual because Cafe Florian works perfectly. And let's say the real challenge is not related to service or coffee or customers. The real challenge started about 30 years ago when we decided to, let's say, relieve a link between Cafe Florian and contemporary art. Why? Because at the end of the 19th century, the then mayor of the city of Venice, the name was Riccardo Selvatico, he invented the project of an art exhibition that should be held all around the city of Venice. That art exhibition was held for the first time 2 years later, the starting of this project. So in 1895, the first Biennale Arte started. And the project of the Biennale was totally thought and realized inside one of the rooms of the Cafe Florian, the Senate room. This is an historical fact, okay? Connected to this fact, we held, concurrently with the Biennale, an art exhibition inside the Cafe Florian. We invite an artist, he or she could be Italian or international, it doesn't matter, but the important thing is that these artists create a site-specific installation for Cafe Florian. So during the Biennale period, you can see a space inside Cafe Florian who is completely opposite to what Cafe Florian is usually in its usual dress. So you see contemporary art inside a sort of museum, and this installation is bought by the ownership of Cafe Florian and belongs to the Florian Contemporary Art Collection. There are some art pieces that we borrowed to museums all around the world, in Paris and New York and London during the years. So this is our challenge. The challenge could be so at once, just imagine a 19th century ambience, okay, with wood, gold, velvet sofas, paintings, and so on, put together with the contemporary art installation. So the difference, what you see is something that is quite strong, but inside Cafe Florian, these two worlds, these two art worlds, really live together in quite a beautiful way. So you just see the people getting into the room and say, oh my God, what is this? This is Cafe Florian? Yes, this is a contemporary interpretation of Cafe Florian.
Arte contemporanea.
Wow. I kind of like the idea that one of the challenges that you're currently tackling is related to art in the cafe, and so many people listening to this program have their own challenges with hanging art in the coffee shop. It's a thing that has been done for so long, and we're still challenged by it.
Our challenge is to be still linked to the past, giving a high quality service, completely refusing to come to terms with new ways of serving coffees. I'm thinking of the takeaway, for instance. Takeaway is something that we don't do and won't do. The reason why Cafe Florian works. Takeaway is not an experience. So we won't do takeaway. But we won. Every day actually wins this kind of challenge, because we have people coming into Cafe Florian and wanting to live this kind of experience that we can give them. That if you think of art, nowadays art is not just an art piece to be hanged somewhere, but it is a mean of communication. That's why so many brands have their own art foundation. Let's think of Prada, Pinot. They all have their own museum and foundation where they collect some art pieces coming from private collections or just pick up all around the world. So Venice is all around the world one of the capital, or the main cities related to art. And Cafe Florian, hosting art exhibition, is connected to the present. So we have a foot in the past because we have tradition and we go on keeping this kind of traditions alive, but we look at the same time, we look at the future.
Un piede nel passato e lo sguardo nel futuro.
That's very interesting to me when we consider, for us in this audience, so many are coffee shop owners and managers and professionals. And there's been so many different technological innovations and different modes of service within the community of coffee. And, having one foot in the past and having a connection to the present. I hear what you're saying about to-go coffee that obviously would ruin the experience. I wonder, what other ways are you connected to the present when it comes to the coffee service or just the operations of Cafe Florian in general? What ways are you connected to what's happening in modern coffee while still maintaining your historical presence as the Florian?
Allora, il Caffè Florian.
Cafe Florian is modern exactly because it is still linked to the past. Maybe it's not so easy to explain, but this is the real reason why Cafe Florian means different things to our customers, related in comparison with, let's say, usual coffee houses or bar. Because in this kind of times where life is so frantic and you run from one place to the other, when you come to Cafe Florian, you know that what you are going to have a special relaxing time. So your watch stops in the exact moments when you enter Cafe Florian. So it's something completely different from any other experience. That's why Cafe Florian is so unique. That's why it's still alive today, after 300 years.
Assolutamente a misura d'uomo.
You should come, Chris.
I should.
You should come
One day. My wife is
and
an artist.
you should come and experience. It's something that until you go there, you cannot fully comprehend. Because I suppose in your life you happen to go to any museum or let's say some ancient palace, okay? When you go there, you saw beautiful furniture and decorations and so on. But you have to go there and just watch. You don't have to touch anything because anything is protected, by alarms and so on. When you go to Cafe Florian, it's exactly like being in a beautiful palace, and you can taste and touch and experience anything. Okay, you can just get there in the morning and stay there until the evening and watching outside and see the world running around St. Mark's Square, okay, is something that you cannot see and experience in any other place. That's the reason why we are still there.
Excellent. Now, I'd like to ask all of our guests generally about things that they would advise to the listeners. What kind of advice, if you had a group of coffee bar owners to give advice to about how maybe they can increase the level of their experience in their coffee bars? They're not going to be the Cafe Florian, but they can do better. We can always do better. And so if you could offer advice to them as to how to elevate their experiences in their coffee bars, that'd be great.
Selezionare.
3 things. Very good selection of the staff is the first thing. The second is to train the staff in order for them to have a more human relationship with the customers. They should be polite but thoughtful. Venice is really the ideal place because imagine you don't have cars, okay? You just go on your feet wherever you want to go. And while going, you meet people. So in Venice, you start friendship by meeting the same people every day, simply by going on foot to work. It's quite strange. It's not something usual. But Venice is a place where people is used to meet and speak. And so this kind of human behavior should be held with all the customers, okay? Being polite, of course, because you are working there and they are customers, but just being kind and polite. And then, of course, the quality of the products that you serve.
Però questo soprattutto per un caffè normale.
Brilliant. And speaking of the quality of the products you serve, and as we wrap up here, my final question to you, were I to make the trip to the Florian and Venice, what should I drink? What should I eat when I'm at the cafe? What are your top choices?
Allora, il momento migliore.
Every season is the right season to come to Venice. And every hour is the right time to go to Cafe Florian. Because according to the day, the hour, the season, you can see, or better, you can admire Venice in a different way. And according to the time of the day, when you are seated at Cafe Florian, you can sip a coffee, taste a cappuccino, or celebrate with the Prosecco sparkling wine.
Che sarà un momento incredibile.
That's a great answer. So excellent answer, and we really appreciate your time and explaining some of the inside operations of Cafe Florian, and I hope that many of us get the opportunity to go and visit and see for ourselves and taste for ourselves, and the experience and certainly hearing about this has really inspired a lot of us to raise our level of experience that we give our customers, and so I really thank you. And happy 300-year birthday. Thank you so much.
To you too, because you are celebrating your 300 episodes. So
Yes, thank you.
congratulations to you as well.
Bravo.
Bravo. Stefano said bravo, okay?
Well, I hope that you all really enjoyed that episode and that it gave you an appreciation for what you do in the coffee shop. When we think about a cafe that's been around for 300 years, it is so many people's lives. You just measure it in how many people's lives have gone in and out of that coffee shop and how much impact that service experience has had on families, on individuals, on politicians, on artists, musicians, etc. All of our coffee bars are doing the same thing wherever we are. Now, we may not be in Venice, we might not be 300 years old, but we are serving an experience that brings an impact to people's lives. And the question is, how are we honing in that experience? How are we viewing what we're doing? Because we are creating change. And whether that's for good or for not, that is up to the intention behind what we do. And that's one of the things I love about this conversation is how much vision and intention and attention to detail there is in what they do at Cafe Florian. And we can all learn a lesson and take a page from their playbook here to help us serve our guests well. And who knows, with the power of the guest experience on your side, maybe your cafe will be the next one to be 300 years old. And, Keys to the Shop, if we're still around then, we'll have you on the show and interview you too. So I want to thank my guest today, Stefano Stipitivich, for all of his insights into what life is like at Cafe Florian. Thank you so much to Cristiana Rivolta for arranging this and for translation. It was really a magical experience for me. And one day, maybe I'll make it to Cafe Florian as well. Thank you both very much. And congratulations on 300 years. Now, if you want the transcript from this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com and on the contact page, fill out your information and click the box that says sign me up for the newsletter. When you do that, you'll be signed up to receive the email that sends you the transcript, which has all of the show links, like the resources mentioned in the show, links to the social media and websites of the guests, and also a lot of related episodes. So if you're really interested in the topic we're talking about and you want more, we do have 300 episodes at Keys to the Shop now officially. So it's a lot of content to go through. So when you see recommended episodes, that's a great place to start learning more about that topic and related topics. And in the email, you also get links to resources that I find online that will help you in your journey as a professional in news about Keys to the Shop as well. So keystotheshop.com on the contact page is the place to go for that. And that's also the place to go if you want to reach out to me. If you have questions or comments about the show, if you have feedback from me on how to improve the show, I'm all ears. I really want to know what you think. I want to know what serves you best, because this show is all about serving you as coffee shop professionals. And that's a great place to do it. If you want to reach out directly, it's just chris@keystotheshop.com. It's my email, chris@keystotheshop.com. And that email is also the contact to use if you want to work with Keys to the Shop Consulting to help you hone in the operations of your business. Maybe you want to up the customer experience and the staff experience at your store. Let's have a conversation about that. chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, news from Keys to the Shop. Of course, Coffee Fest is coming up March 8th through the 10th. That's in New York City. Great place for amazing coffee, great food, and the world's best trade show for coffee retailers, Coffee Fest. CoffeeFest.com is the place to go. Click on the New York City show to see all of the events, like the latte art competition or the cold brew competition, the seminars, the free workshops, and the really well-priced paid workshops. And there's so much great content here and an amazing array of vendors to help outfit your coffee shop. So if you're really looking for the best in giving you resources, education, training, networking opportunities with fellow coffee entrepreneurs, and suppliers for supplying your coffee shop, there's really no other place to look except Coffee Fest. And I've been going for so long, and I'm such a big fan. I hope to see you there in New York City. If you see me in my shiny bald head, then please do introduce yourself. I would love to meet you. And just like that, the 300th broadcast of Keys to the Shop comes to a close. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to subscribe to Keys to the Shop, share these episodes with your friends. Also follow at Keys to the Shop on Instagram. And thank you for listening and supporting the show. And I hope, as always, that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.